how could the federal government improve its pandemic response?
I think it's tricky. I think no matter who's in power, there's always going to be someone who's not happy with the decisions they're making. And I think in retrospect, we'll see what they should have done differently. But I can't pinpoint something specific.
I think it's good to keep safe old people, the seniors, but to let the young people and the middle generation to keep living.
How could they do a better job? Well, I guess just keep up the border closure, because that's made me feel much more secure, and just keep up the restrictions until our numbers are better.
I'm not sure how, because nobody has a magic ball where they can figure out what's happening. I think the response is the best they could, and I think they're doing a great job, because nobody knew that was coming, and afterwards everybody knew it better. So I think they're doing a great job.
Well, they could start taking the recommendations of reports that they request. There was a report that was requested in the 90s on what the biggest threat was, and they identified a pandemic back in the 90s. And nothing was done with that report on the government level, so I think we have to start listening to experts when they tell us things.
So I think the federal government has done a fairly good job with its pandemic response. I think we're seeing some steps in the right direction in terms of travel, right? We've seen recent announcements about the borders closing and encouraging Canadians to stay home and not travel in the event of further restrictions. That's helpful. We've seen how many millions of people enter and leave the country since the pandemic started. And of course, with that comes bringing those COVID cases, bringing that UK strain here. So as long as we're extremely cautious about that, we've seen different examples from countries like New Zealand who have really handled that well in terms of their isolation period. So I think overall, Canada's done a pretty good job. We've had about 18,000 deaths, so that comes into question of how good we've actually done, because we've had quite a few Canadians who have lost their lives, but I definitely think there's room for improvement.
They're just paying, they're paying everybody a stipend, if you want to call it that, to survive. Now there's rumor of the Great Reset, so it's really difficult to say, exactly, is it for their own political purposes or is it something else? That's my question. And it seems to be it's political more than anything, in my opinion.
I understand it's tricky, but if there were some resources or people available to take a more individualistic look at what's happening, or to be able to dig into the programs that are being closed or restricted but are actually safe places to be, I think if they could take a little peek into, or if they had the time and resources to take more of a look into that, to do an accurate shutdown of what needs to be shut down and what are the high percentages of transferring the virus versus industries that might not be.
Well, I think they're doing pretty well right now. Every day we're following the Prime Minister with his 10-15 minutes, how you call that, those shot that he comes out there and give to opinion to ask people not to do this or that, and give information. I think we're well informed, Same thing in New Brunswick with Dr. Russell and the Premier. Everything is well covered.
To be honest, I don't really know. This is something new. I've never been through a pandemic. You've never been through a pandemic. So it's hard to know what the right thing is to do in the moment. You're kind of listening to all these different advisors, taking information about other countries, how they're responding. And I think they're doing the best that they possibly can. So I don't think there's anything different that they could do at the moment. But that's just my personal opinion. So
there needs to be more relief for those who are affected, because the limitations on their restrictions I find is just little ludicrous. I was affected by it myself, and I was just under the threshold and was denied for it, and that was the worst affection there. Thankfully got back to work pretty quickly once the lockdown lifted, but there could be more towards the folk who are going to be affected at the bottom, because it doesn't matter what's happening at the top, it's everyone at the bottom who's been hit the hardest.
Vaccinations. That is so frustrating. Honestly, I have no idea why we're not being vaccinated right now. If it's there, we can get flu shots at any time. Why can't we get a vaccination that can help us move on as a city, as a province, as a country? So,
I guess I haven't been focused too much nationally, mostly provincially. So maybe a bit more, unity between the provinces and the way they're handling things. Certainly the vaccine kind of rollout is going to be weird because each province is going to be doing it their own kind of way. So that might be an area where they kind of want to get things kind of on the same page.
By getting more on-the-ground response, having the community members that are most directly affected have their voices be heard more. I would really be interested to know what the majority of the people that run these long-term care centers think about how we're dealing with the pandemic, because I personally haven't heard from any of them. They're too busy saving lives. It would be really interesting to know that the federal government was taking direct action as directed by the most at-risk citizens, which would be Indigenous people and the elderly.
I don't know if I could give you any thoughtful answer to that question right off the bat, other than the fact that I think that say that they maybe have overreacted in some cases not soon enough and overreacted in some cases too late.
I think the number one thing is we've got to get the vaccine out to everybody. We've got to get that out to everybody, all age ranges, as fast as we can to stop it and keep supporting the provinces in getting that out to folks.
Be quick. You know, we heard about all those cases rising, and I even knew that after New Year's stuff was going to hit the fan, and I don't think they responded as quick as they should have. They should have instantly known that, okay, New Year's is going to affect everything, Christmas is going to affect everything. Why did they wait a week to see the stuff come out? We knew it was coming.
I feel like we should look more towards the New Zealand and Australian outcomes because it doesn't matter of party lines, more of the outcomes of how they shut down all borders and had 14-day quarantine in a hotel, which they're currently talking about, but it's a matter of opinion-based and their decision comes first, I guess.